The communication from the recruiter is the #1 issue. The speed in the process is the #2 issue. And what do you think the third one is? Because I already mentioned it. And that's your brand. What do you do with your brand? How do we as recruiters actually impact our brand? What do we do? And I'm not talking about our personal brand like I talked about yesterday, but the outside brand. Those are the 3 things we're going to hit on. So, this whole idea of communication. Sometimes I get stuff thrown at me when I just referenced the 3-headed dragon. You want to see what the 3-headed dragon is? Oh my gosh. You got HR to deal with, you got your hiring manager, and you got your candidate. We got to communicate, we got to have some kind of relationship with all 3 of them, right? So how do we deal with the 3? And why do we have problems with the 3? Because here's what happens. This lack of communication sometimes causes a slowdown in the process, so it affects the speed. We don't know what we're looking for is what the manager says. The HR person says, you don't know, you don't have enough candidates in here, and we're pulling our hair out and you look like me. So what do we do? How do we deal with this HR relationship? Let's take each one of those. We have HR, we have hiring manager, and we have candidate. In this economy, how do we want to deal with those 3? So here's the interesting thing. Okay, look at this, what it says. Problem with an unclear life cycle. Now, I won't tell you where you and your HR partner should collaborate. I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is that there is a place that the first place I would go for information is my HR business partner. Because there is this natural tension between the 2, because the HR side says, I got to retain people. The recruiting side just says, you're an impediment to me. I can't recruit people fast enough. Because there's no conversation going on. Recruiters always whine and complain about, I never know ahead of time what this organization is doing. Most of the time your HR person does. So have you ever thought about picking up the phone to that person you hate and saying, can we sit down and have coffee because this is driving me freaking crazy? Some of the best recruiters that I've seen, when they get a rec and they've not dealt with that manager before they call the manager, who do you think they call? The HR business partner. Why do they do that? That HR business partner has been dealing with them. They know what kind of personality they have. They know what kind of people work for them. They know if they're a developer or if they're a problem child. Right? They know all that stuff. Why wouldn't you want that ahead of time? Plus, it puts this little coin in the emotional piggy bank of that HR person. I would have them on my side because it speeds up the process. Now, if they're not involved at all from the open rec to selection, I don't know what the hell their job is, but they got to be involved somewhere in the process. I don't see how you can separate recruiting from HR. I don't know how you could do it. Now, I'm never going to be an advocate to say that your HR business partner should own your process. I will never. Now, I won't tell you what the right process is because I've seen some organizations where the HR business partner has a little more control and it works fine, and I've seen it where they have 0 control. But you could speed up the process of even selecting the right candidate, even if you're doing the selecting, by going to your HR business partner and having a conversation. I'm not an HR guy. Please understand that. But they should have the insight that you need to do your job better. What about your relationship with the hiring manager? So here's the interesting thing. I go talk to 100, I said this yesterday, I go talk to 100 hiring managers and I say, tell me about your recruiting organization. Don't know what I want. Too many processes. Not fast enough. Too many questions. Don't get it. Don't understand the business. Okay, same group. I go to the recruiting side and I say, tell me about your hiring manager. They don't understand the process. They don't get it. They don't know what they want, so forth. Now, here's the interesting thing. I say to the recruiter, tell me about your relationship with the hiring manager. Oh, they love us. I go to the hiring manager and I say, tell me about your relationship. Oh, I know that. I get along great. They don't know what they're doing, but they get along great. This is all, I see this constantly, guys. There's this disconnect between the 2 of them on an ongoing basis because we don't know how to manage that relationship with our hiring managers. We have a problem with this. It slows down the process because when we go to present candidates, we can't lead them on that candidate. And I get the, oh, I need more, I need more, I need more. Send me more candidates. We get this constant thing. We played this out much longer yesterday, so Steve, you get what I'm saying here, but I can't go through all that like I did yesterday. But we got to understand this kind of stuff. We have to, who's supposed to be the recruiting expert? Yeah. Are you leading the process like you are, and are they coming to you and saying, you are the expert, you tell me what we should do, or are they saying, let me see all the resumes? So here's the thing. In my opinion, it's not about having to always push back. It's starting with a platform that allows you to have more influence. But there are certain things to do when you're taking the job order, when you're presenting candidates. Core things that some of us may never have learned, we just did because we got thrown into recruiting. We forget some of these basic influential patterns that we have without pushing back in the way in which we communicate. So when, this is one of the things I hear all the time. My manager doesn't know what they want. This is what I hear all the time from recruiters. My manager doesn't know what they want. How many of you have experienced that feeling? They have no freaking clue what they want. Whose job is it to get it out of them? Yeah, there's a right way to do that, and by doing that the right way, by asking the right questions, and I can't get into all of that right now, but you need to have that base because you need to start influencing them from the beginning, so it's not a, hey, push back all the time. There is a time to push back, and I agree with you that there's this hangover going on. Because recruiters, to me, right now, seem a little more timid than they've been before. And it's the same thing I saw in 2002-ish after the dot-com bust, because everybody lost their jobs back then as well. But those that have continued on, and you can see them still leading the process, they innately have some of these influencers inside of them. And those of us that don't have that relationship, we don't have it innately, we need to learn it. And there's a lot of key areas around communication, always communicating good and bad. We hear this all the time, this communicate good and bad. Do we put it into practice? And here's what I mean by this. We're the first ones to call our hiring manager when we got a candidate. Yay, look what I got! What do we do when we don't have one? Stall. Caller ID. Oh crap. It is absolutely, why do we do that? What do you think builds more credibility? Avoiding that caller ID that comes through and saying, then doing this, sending an email saying, hey, I saw that you called. I'll get back to you tomorrow with an update. And you're like all night, how am I going to get them an update? Or is it better to call up and say, Mr. or Mrs. Manager, guess what? I did this, this, and this. It didn't generate what you need. It doesn't have the quality we're looking for, but, hold on one sec, but now we're going to go do this, this, and this. So we're a little bit behind, I understand, but I'm not going to throw crap at you. I will tell you, 60-some% of the recruiters that I've watched and seen, it's, oh, crap. And they don't respond. And then why do you think managers think, well, they never communicate with me? It slows down the process because here's what happens. Then the recruiter brings some candidates to the forefront. Then the manager doesn't trust them to bring the right candidates to the forefront, and that's when they start saying, I want to see more, I want to see more, I want to see more. Now you run the risk of pissing off the candidate that you did bring to the table that happens to be good because you don't have the relationship with the manager in the first place to say, this is the one. You have no pull at that point, none. And you can't blame it all on the manager. Some managers are just jerks, I get it. But you can't blame it all on the manager, can you? No. Some of that is your responsibility to be able to do. So this candidate relationship, what's our issue with the candidate relationship? Because we're still in the communication piece. We have this pipeline drop-off. 52% of candidates feel like they weren't treated like an individual. Glassdoor substantiates that. All the other ones out there substantiates that. And then you ask the recruiter, how's your relationship with the candidate? They love me. They love me. Baloney. They don't love you. They had a problem with you and they just didn't tell you because you were the one who could potentially get them that job. But their experience was horrible. 52% of them will say that. Sad, sad, sad state of affairs. Because we hide from them. This is where I said earlier, you have to be honest with them, but be careful on the legal side. There's one of these bullets up at some point that says, be blunt, not stupid. Tell them. They appreciate honesty if there's going to be a longer process, if there's other candidates in play, what have you. But to drag it out, man, I got other options. I'm out of here. And then you're not going to get me, and you're going to have to start all over again. Just be honest with them. Now, don't be stupid and don't break any legal reasons as to why they're not a candidate. But there's nothing wrong with saying, we just have candidates that are more qualified than you. We're not going to consider you anymore. They're going to be upset, but you know what? They will appreciate it big time. And then let them move on. Just speeds up the whole process and improves that relationship with the candidates. This whole idea of speed is a problem in this economy right now, because one of the biggest complaints, as I said, the second biggest complaint was these organizations don't move fast enough. They don't make decisions fast enough. They don't know how to make decisions fast enough. I don't want to go work for them because they never move fast enough in the first place. Ongoing thing that happens all the time, right? So there's a couple of things that we've got to understand. And I'm preaching to the choir because I'm sure you're telling your leadership this all the time. Qualified candidates have options. They know it. Again, there's so many statistics out there about this stuff. Get it in front of your managers so they understand it, right? What drives candidates to accept offers elsewhere when in the middle of the recruiting process? You're dragging your feet. Prepare everybody. Have the conversation up front, right? This plays into the speed thing. So we just talked about it in terms of communication. All these overlap, okay, by the way. This comment of my manager doesn't know what they need. What does that cause? Why does that slow down the process? You don't know what to look for. When you do bring candidates to the table, you're really just kind of throwing crap at the wall and hoping something sticks, because we don't pull it out of them. Unfortunately, I don't see us taking the intake session seriously sometimes. We blow by it as a transaction as opposed to actually going through the process and figuring out what do they really need in the first place, because we don't know what questions to ask or how to ask them. We think we do, but we never get out of them what they really need in that particular job. But there's a couple of things to do. You guys said this. Set expectations up front. What's the process going to look like? What do I need your involvement to be? What's my involvement going to be, and so forth. This is my favorite one. See the little thing on the right-hand side? It says mediocrity. And then I reference the bar. Here's what happens often when we don't set a bar on the candidate. Common thing. You don't really know exactly what your hiring manager is looking for, but you're close. You go out there and you find 3 candidates and you give them to the hiring manager. The hiring manager says, sure, I'm going to interview them. At the end of those 3, they come back and they say to you, yeah, just not the right fit. They're all right, just not the right fit. And then you say, okay, but you got to hire one of them anyways. This happens. This happens. These are the 3 best candidates that are out there. And then you get ticked off because you say the manager doesn't know what they want. But you never establish what the bar was first. And this is a quality of candidate issue. It's tied directly right back to quality of candidate, even though it's outside of speed right here. We have a tendency to hire people doing comparative analysis. This one's better than this one is better than this one. But we never actually set our bar. So we compared them, and we picked the best of the 3, but it's below our bar. We should never be doing comparative analysis of our candidates until we know they're above the bar. Does that make sense? So we have to establish the bar with the hiring manager in the first place. Otherwise, we keep throwing crap at the wall and hoping they're above the bar or close to the bar, and maybe even put the hiring manager in a position where they hire the best of what you've given them instead of the best of the best. So then it comes down, this is a whole different issue, but I'll bring it up. Are you responsible for quality of hire? Hugely impactful on the quality of hire, because you're giving them what to pick from. But we won't go there. But it affects this speed thing too, because you're not going and giving more candidates and giving more candidates and giving more candidates. Don't blow off the importance of the intake. You got to ask the questions, be realistic, rank skills, write them down, put them in front of your hiring manager and say rank them. Here's what will start happening. This is number 1. Oh, wait a minute, I got that. This is number 1. No. And they start rationalizing out loud. Because this is the common thing to do, is to say, what's your non-negotiables, what's your negotiables? And I find that it's usually a different answer than if you say, rank them, because they have to commit to it. And you have to think out loud when you're actually ranking. Just a little trick to get to a better understanding of what the heck do they really want. When you present a candidate, you bring that thing back up. The thing that they ranked, you say, okay, this was what was important. Let's understand how they meet each one of these, and have that dialogue, or if you have to do it by email, which I don't like, but you have to do. Go ahead and do it by email, and bring them back to, this is what we agreed on. This is what you ranked in front of me. And then after they rank it in front of me, then I send them that follow-up email and say, this is what we agreed on, right? So there's always that going, because it speeds up the entire process. The candidates enjoy it better because they know they're moving through the process faster. The hiring manager has more credibility in you. You have more credibility in their eyes, I mean, because you hit it closer right from the get-go, and you're helping extract from them what they really need. Just a little trick. Make sense? Okay. This communication thing around speed too, listening to candidates, I find as recruiters, we love to talk. We don't listen, we wait to talk. And we're never really hearing the signs from the candidate that we can address. And I talked a lot about this yesterday. We spent a fair amount of time on this, but it's about understanding the motivators of the candidate. If you get off your call with your candidate and you can't write down what I call the points of pain and the points of pleasure, you don't know your candidate, you don't even know if this is the right job or the right company for that candidate. Now you're throwing crap at the wall and hoping something sticks again. And then this whole idea of preparation. So many recruiters will walk into an intake session, somebody will say, well, I'm looking for a Java developer. J-A-V-A, is that right? It's like, really? Do you know how to use frickin' Google? Look at the terms on the job description. Come in with some understanding. And what you don't know, say, I know this, I don't know that. Get a real sense of what the heck this organization or that hiring manager is looking for. Did you talk to your HR partner? This is the other thing. Again, you may not have that problem, but in other instances, talk to your HR partner. They know what's going on. They know about some of the issues in that organization with that manager, whatever it might be. Where did the last successful candidate come from? And just about being prepared for some of this stuff. And then this whole idea of technology, do the tools actually make us faster? Well, they should. The problem is we don't always use them like they're meant to be used. We use them as glorified databases. We don't use them as actually networking and building relationships and all these kind of things. So use them the way they're meant to be used. We have a tendency not to use technology the way it's supposed to because we say we don't have the time. If you use it right for its right purposes, it does actually free up your time. But we can also get lost in it very, 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 very quickly. This whole idea of building your brand. How many of you work with your marketing department to actually do branding? Okay, so a few of you do that. It's so, so, so important because that's what candidates are looking at. That's one of their drivers now, right? We were just talking about that. It's not just the skills gap any longer. It's what's your company stand for, what's the brand, and so forth. It's one of the most important things that they look at with Glassdoor and so forth. How do we actually get to them? How do we communicate with them? How do we build our brand as the employer of choice? And I don't want to get into a whole discussion on overall branding, but what are some of the things that we should be looking at? Keep in mind some of the career drivers of millennials today, and that's a lot of what we're hiring today, right? Giving back and being civically engaged, flexible work schedules, work-life balance. They're looking for something different. It's not just because your company name is Starbucks or Time Warner. They're not going to come work for you anymore just because that's your name. You got to do something a little bit different. How do you communicate this stuff out, right? How do you communicate out about your culture? You got to understand these things. What are the building blocks to building a brand? Number one, you got to create awareness, right? Somehow you got to get your name out there. Before you build a brand, you have to just get your name out there and build awareness. You got to figure out a way to actually engage them. What do you want to do by engaging them? Convert them. You want to influence them. That's the way we're supposed to use branding. We don't. We kind of usually shove our name out there and say, you need to come work for us for these 3 reasons. And that's it. Unfortunately, we don't spend the time sometimes doing the engagement, doing it the right way and communicating the right information. We've got to understand what we're trying to do, what our goals are. What's important to the audience, right? What's the message you're trying to get across and why? You know this stuff, right? Are you promoting an event? What are you trying to do in that particular instance? Then the second thing is, what's the desired result? What are you trying? Are you driving attendance? Are you gathering contact info? Are you trying to share information? What are you doing with your brand from a recruiting perspective? It falls into one of these categories. You can't do all of them all the time. And we try to do all of them all the time. And I'm trying to rush through this. And then define your goals. What are your people? What are they most interested in? And so forth. I had to zip through that real quickly. Here's my end point in all this stuff. We do have this war for talent, or whatever you want to call it, going on. It's not just on skills. You got to look at everything else. What I'm trying to tell you is that you have the biggest impact in being the recruiter than all the other crap that's going on. Because the relationship you have with that candidate is the thing that's going to salvage this. Assuming that you have the right communication with them, that you're fast enough, and that you can attract them in the first place with the brand. So basic stuff, but don't forget it. That's why we're having some of the problems that we're having right now. Thank you.